Well, John, it's a while since you've been in this room, I guess. I mean, when you were managing director here, it was a home from home, but that's about 6-7 years ago now?
I think it's a bit longer than that, Bob.
Is it really?
Yes, I left here in 2000, so it's 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously if we start talking about what I'm doing at the moment, it is now, I've just gone past the longest I've ever worked at any one place, and that's including Wolves. I was here at Wolves for 14 years. Yeah, and it's 15 years now since I was here as managing director. So a lot of things have happened in that time.
What's it like coming back into this?
That's fabulous. Yeah, and in fact I was at the training ground the other day with the head groundsman there, Wayne Lombard, just because I haven't been down there since it's all been developed, and absolutely stunning. You know, this stadium is fantastic, and I couldn't believe what I saw at their training ground. You know, with facilities, a full, undercover synthetic pitch, absolutely stunning facilities. And I think that's, if you're asking about what's changed a great deal, obviously things like pitches, but it's actually facilities that support a football club. And a lot of it's due to the money that's been coming from the TV, but it's, in a lot of cases, it's been well used to provide the better facilities.
So when you were here, where did you train?
We trained at, I'm just trying to think, we trained a little bit over at...
Part of the time you're up at Castlecroft, weren't you?
No, Castlecroft, when I played, it was Castlecroft or the racecourse, or Cannock Chase. Right. And that's where the three main sort of areas, Cannock Chase to, when Bill McGarry was feeling a bit annoyed with us, he'd take us up there and make us run cross country. And sometimes, again, if he was still annoyed with us, especially in the winter, he'd take us to the racecourse and make us run there and back. When we went to Castlecroft, we usually got a bus. So, because that had got a little bit of an indoor area, a bit of a stand, so we could actually have a bit more of a proper training, and occasionally on the pitch itself. But when you look at that, that was in the first division, and we thought those facilities were fantastic. We had really modern stuff like a hanging ball from a post for training. So that was really up to date.
I mean, we're going back to what you came here in the summer of '69. We're making it sound like it's hundreds of years ago. Yeah. But as you say, when you look at how it is now, players today simply wouldn't believe. I mean, we're in a room festooned with photographs of a fabulous club, terrific era, things they won in the '50s, and it was so basic, wasn't it? Yes.
You had in those days players, as I was myself. I was coming to training I was professional, on the bus. From digs, you still had things called club houses, where the club would have 4 or 5 houses to deal with new players, that were transferred in, because in those days, players couldn't automatically afford a house. So they would rent a house from the club, so that it's obviously it makes it easier to get people to come to this area, and then, as I said, training. In some cases, you'd have a bus to take your training. Other times, you'd run there. No, it was very basic. You'd wear the same kit, like 2 or 3 days running. From a training point of view, we had big an airing area where they had heaters and things like that, and it was I think it was Mrs. Clamp, Eddie Clamp's mother. She used to be in charge of the laundry, so she'd put it, you did train in the morning, she'd stick them on the dryers, and whether it was covered in mud or not, and you wore them again the same day. It'd be unheard of nowadays, it'd be fresh kit, which is right, but that's how it was. And 1 pair of boots at any one time, only 1 pair of match boots. You'd have probably 2 pair of training boots and a pair of flat shoes for indoor at the gym here that we've got just up the road. And basically that was it. You only got a new pair of boots if your match boots were torn, or they actually just fall into pieces. But compared to what we had at those days, it was fantastic. It was just the thought of playing for a professional football club. When I joined Wolves, I'd signed on a 1-year contract, And all I ever wanted to do was play out there on that pitch. One match, that's all I wanted for the first team. And I'd have left after a year and been totally happy. And that was my ambition in those days. And I think a lot of people are the same. They're just, the crowds we were getting, people were envious of me, and I used to be so proud to walk from the bus stop down the road, coming into Molyneux, even as a new player, thinking, I hope they think I'm a footballer. So.
Well, that's sounding like we're doing Last of the Summer Wine here, but when you see players now with their lifestyle and their tattoos and pink boots and orange boots and all the rest of it, is there something inside you that thinks, that's not really quite right?
Yes and no. I don't blame them. They get paid that sort of money, they earn it, and it's not really, it's supply and demand. It's very difficult for them, compared to what we used to do. We could walk about, we could actually mix with people, not have any worries whatsoever. I think nowadays they must feel as if they're in the spotlight all the time. Everybody wants to take a picture of them, report on them, tell other people what they're doing, where they are, 24 hours a day. And I can understand why they retreat to their properties which have got security, etc. But I feel probably more sorry for supporters. I think they have a lot less affection and affinity with the players. We saw ourselves as a team as very much a team with the supporters as well. We were playing for them, and we used to go out in this town. A lot of us weren't from here, but we obviously lived in the town. But we mixed with the supporters. They knew us. They knew our characters. They knew if we had a bad game, it wasn't deliberate. You just have an off game, and they would be more forgiving. And I actually think nowadays they're a lot less forgiving, and I think that's to the detriment of the game, and it's to the detriment of the players. But I can see and understand why it's gone that way. But I think the fans are the biggest losers.
As you say, a lot of you, as is the case now, but you were English players, but you weren't from here. You were from Cheshire,
That's
and
right.
Yet, like so many, you've stayed here, haven't you? You've never gone back.
Yes. I think it's because of the age when we come here, and then obviously you mix locally, you meet a local girl. I think that's what tends to happen, and then they've got roots here, they've got family, and you've moved away from your family, so you've done that initial move anyway. And interestingly, towards the end of the year, your sort of playing days, as with a lot of the other players, you do go and play for other clubs. I've seen John McCall recently, and John did the same. Went to play for Derby. Derek Parkin went to play for Stoke, but they come back. I went to play in Portugal, but you come back. Because in that period of time, when you're here for 12, 14 years, you've married a local girl, you've sort of got children going to local schools, and you build up a network of friends here as well. So it becomes your home. And I think that's what happens to that sort of generation. I think it's totally changed since then, Bob, because apart from a handful of players, people like Stevie Bull, a lot of the players are only here 4 or 5 years and then they move on. So they haven't got the same sort of connection.
And before Steve and before yourself, there were people like Billy Wright, weren't they? I mean, they were from up the road, and people, they felt they were their own, didn't they? They felt an immediate affinity with them.
Oh, with those sort of players, and a lot of them would have been going to the match on the same bus as the supporters, and you're sort of playing on behalf of them. You're actually a supporter who becomes a player, and I think that was a good time for the football. It wasn't a particularly good time for the players, because obviously a lot of them weren't earning a great deal of money to be able to go on and sort of put the feet up, so to speak. But it was, everybody relates back to that time, the great times. And the great times for Wolves was that 50s, 50s with the Homebird, with all the European games and the FA Cup and things like that. And those players now are just regarded as gods. Parts of the stands are named after Billy. People still talk about Johnny Hancock, Jimmy Mullen. It's Bert Williams. It's 60, 70 years ago since they played, but they're still regarded as God's top people in this town, and will do forever and a day. I would suspect.
As indeed were you. I mean, you were known as King John, weren't you? Until Steve Bull came along, nobody got anywhere near scoring the number of goals you did. You've still scored more FA Cup goals for this team, this club, than anybody else. And I mean, it's ingrained in you, isn't it? This club.
Yes, and this is my. All right, I was born in Warrington, and I suppose that's still town in birth, and you still consider myself to be a Warringtonian, but I'm more of a Wolverinian because I've spent most of my life here, and I'm very grateful for it. And it does give me a great deal of pleasure, and I know it does annoy my wife occasionally when we're out having a drink and someone comes up and said, Did you used to be John Richards? And my wife goes, it still is. But it's a lovely feeling, Bob. But there's nothing nicer than people who want to reminisce. In a lot of cases nowadays, that the fans have got better memories than I have. They remember certain goals, they'll remember certain games, and it's nice to have that sort of involvement and affection from fans, because it's we had a long time together. 14 years playing in front of fans like any football supporters, and you get an affection for each other.
Of course, when you actually stopped playing, you worked for the council, didn't you?
That was an interesting one, because I've got no plans of what I was going to do. I actually went to Portugal, played for 2 years for a team called Marítimo, so I did that deliberately because it was an opportunity, and I didn't really want to go down the leagues here. When you get to that sort of age, which is what I was, 32, nearly 33, my options were fairly limited. I could stay on at the club without a guarantee of being in the first team. Players like to play, it's as simple as that. And then this opportunity came up to play in Madeira, and we did that for 2 years, then came back, no idea what I was going to do, no plans, and then the opportunity arose because they were restructuring at the local council, and they were setting up what was called a leisure services department, which involved a new position for a sports and recreation officer.
And did they come to you?
No, I was actually made aware of the position by somebody who knew me and who was he worked at the council, so it wasn't a councillor, it was somebody who worked at the council. Says, "Oh, they've got this position, you might be interested in it." So I got the job advert and saw what it was, and it was actually involved with all the sports facilities and a community sports team which they'd got. So it was overseeing things like the Aldersley Stadium, Central Baths and things like that. So it was slightly different.
Was it a bit of a shock?
Totally. But it was. I wasn't planning to go into football. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I was doing a little bit of work for the local Express and Star, a bit of writing and stuff like that, which I quite enjoyed. But it was never going to be a career for me.
No.
So this was something different, a new challenge. The fact that it was a new position was helpful, because I wasn't going into something that was already set in stone. And people do criticise local authorities, but I was at Wolverhampton for 6 years, and there was a lot of good people there, genuine people trying to do a lot of good for the town, and a lot of good councillors who I got to know very well, and thoroughly enjoyed it for those 6 years. And different sort of discipline, Bob, in the way that you had to do things. Local authorities, you have to report to committees because you report to councillors and obviously the senior officers to make the wheels turn. And you have to be very thorough in preparing reports, looking at the financial implications, and that really helped me, with what I'm doing now. And
did people, when they suddenly turned up and you were there, think, it's John Richards, what are you doing here?
Yeah, oh yeah, it used to happen all the time, and straight away it spoiled whatever we were there to discuss, because it went from discussing, sports development or setting up something else, a sports group, or doing this, that and the other at the stadium, to talking about Wolves. So we spent probably 2/3 of the meeting talking about Wolves, and the other third about the business we were there to discuss. But at the same time, it also helped in breaking down barriers because there was a common denominator for me to talk to other people.
Getting up in the morning, putting on a suit, going to work, now going home at lunchtime. My word, it must have been a shock.
Yeah, it was. But I was very lucky because my first day at work was a bank holiday. It was the 1st of January, 1986. So I didn't have to go until the 2nd. So it was there was a little bit of a bonus there. And to be honest, Bob, I quite enjoyed the structure. The discipline that there was required with that. All right, you have discipline in football, but it's a lot more relaxed, as you said. Training at 10 o'clock.
And a new life.
Yeah.
So you get the feet under the table at Wolverhampton with the council, and then you went up to Cannock, didn't you?
That was right. That was just an opportunity to get into a more senior position, because I felt I'd had 6 years at Wolverhampton and really enjoyed it, met a lot of nice people, but really I wanted to make that next step, and the opportunity really wasn't arising in Wolverhampton. So I went to Cannock, teamed up with another group of people over there, and again got to know some really nice people. It was more of what I would class a working class area, very much a mining area, very labour, sort of angled, and really genuine people, and a lot of Wolves supporters. Obviously, there's kind of Wolves supporters club, and I was welcomed with open arms, and as I said, got on with everybody there.
It was the same sort of job, was it?
Yes, but just at a higher level. So I was in charge of more of the leisure facilities. So I was in charge of the theatres that were there, and it was a bigger area geographically, even though it's a smaller area from sort of population. But it meant there was covering Rugeley, Cannock, Burton, places like that. And again, it's a new experience. I think what it was, Bobby, was the fact that it was another challenge. I'd probably done as much as I could at Wolverhampton. I just needed to take that next step.
So you're into your 40s now, and were you thinking, well, this is it, a career in local government, or was there something at the back of your mind thinking, I want or I need to do something else?
No, at the time there wasn't a need to do anything else. I was quite happy. I could see me going to the retirement within local authority. I hadn't got plans to look anywhere else. There was nothing else that really interested me. As I said, football was never ever something I'd consider working in.
Was that because you saw the casualty rate among managers, or did you just think it's a new part of life?
I never saw myself having the ability to be a coach or a trainer. Some of the players who were played with, you could see they were naturals. People like Kenny was very good. Kenny a bit, Mike Bailey had a go at it, and you could see them. They were natural leaders on the field. I was more I was a team player rather than the one who was actually dictating and seeing how things should be strategically, so tactically. So really, I knew from day one I was never going to continue a career in football. Yeah. So it was a case of local authorities, enjoy myself at Cannock, opportunities to probably develop my career there, or if not, look around. But we were settled. We were settled there, and no, I wasn't going to go anywhere else.
And nobody in football come knocking and say, look, John, you could do this for us, you could do that for us?
No, and I can understand why. I think there were so many players around at the time, and you got to remember, each year there's more and more players coming out of the game, there's more and more names who actually in that mix with for clubs. So clubs were really spoilt for choice, and especially as people were moving around a great deal, in the Midlands, there was lots and lots of other players who were probably interested in staying within the game, but it was never my cup of tea.
And then, was it kind of out of the blue when Sir Jack rang you?
Yeah, because I hadn't been to many games, come to the odd games, met Sir Jack a few times. And it was just a call out of the blue from Richard Skirrow, the club secretary. I said that we'd like to pop into the club, just like to have a chat with you. And came in. No idea what it was going to be about. I thought,
you didn't bring your boots, did you?
Yeah, it was probably in those days when boots were required, but it was a case of, they must be having a function coming up. They wanted to do something with regard to former players, etc. But it was the year after Billy had died. Billy Wright, who was on the board, and Sir Jack had suggested myself as someone as a former player, to sit on the board and be that sort of link with the history of Wolves, the link to the supporters, and it was very flattering and really an invitation I couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
So I took came on board as a director in 1995 and found myself immersed in football again, something which I never really expected, and it was.
Did you get grief from Pam, did you, about that?
I think she thoroughly enjoyed it, Bob. I think she quite enjoyed the sort of travelling about and being fed and not having to cook meals, and it was a time of our lives anyway when the girls were away from home, so there was just the two of us, so we could devote the time to it. So we were going to virtually every game, home and away, as many as we could. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a whale of a time. Bit frustrating, disappointing at the time because the Wolves were, we were struggling a bit. We just keep missing out on the playoffs and things like that. And it was an eye opener from my point of view because, being immersed in local authorities, then you've got the working at a board level at a sort of highly commercial organisation which was dealing in big money.
Open your eyes a little bit, because I mean, the double irony really was the fact, of course, you played here.
Yes.
So you knew, you felt you knew the club, but I suspect within a short time,
I didn't know half.
You didn't know anything.
Didn't know half about it, Bob. When you're talking to, about dealing with agents.
Yeah.
In my generation, very few players had agents. And most of the discussions were with the agents. And then you've got the other bits and pieces of it with regards to development, looking at what we're going to do with the stands. We were all aware that we needed to put some money aside to build new stands, get the stadium up to scratch. So it was a totally different approach.
If memory serves me right, when the club decided they needed a new MD or an MD, the interview process happened.
Yeah.
You looked at lots of people, and you're sitting down for lunch, and Sir Jack goes, "Well, I don't think we found the right person." And is it right that he leant across the table and said, "You should be doing this job"?
Almost, yeah. It was quite interesting that Sir Jack had invited me first of all to be on the interview panel. I'd had a lot of experience through interviewing techniques, etc., with the council at that sort of level. But we were dealing with people who've been headhunted. People who were being put forward by high-profile recruitment companies to come in to take this position of a new position of the managing director. So Sir Jack and myself and one of the directors on the panel, and we interviewed them, and I think we've done about 3 or 4. And Jack's more of as you know anyway, of a feel person. He senses. He's got very good senses. He knows what's right and what's wrong, and there was always something. They were all high quality. And there was always something with Sir Jack. I
can imagine.
Yeah, and always came away. Yeah, and so we sat down, and then we'd done about 4 or 5, and we were just sitting around afterwards. And Sir Jack said, "Why don't you do it?"
Had it crossed your mind?
No, it was because why would it? I was not there to sort of looking for a position, and as I said to you, it was never mine. I'd always got the local authority. That was it. I was quite happy to be a member, a director, and that was it. So it was a bit of a sort of googly that he threw into the mix.
How did you react?
Well, I said that I might have to think about it. And when I might have to think about it, I might have to ask my wife to see what her response would have been. Because, but again, it was more a thought about it. It was a new position. Hadn't been one before, so you're not
could make it your own, couldn't you?
Not following anybody else's footsteps. So it was an opportunity, and the fact that Sir Jack had done the invitation himself, it gave me the confidence to say, I'll give it a go.
3 years you're in that job?
3 years, and probably the most intense 3 years of my life. A lot more difficult than I anticipated. A lot more things that I had to deal with, from...
Can you give me just one example of something that you thought, wow, I didn't realise this would be on the agenda?
Well, trying to mop up after a Christmas party which went wrong with players, and you have to sort of deal with that with the players themselves. So it's more like an HR function. Dealing with being a go-between at some stage with the manager was there to manage. In my view, it was always my view that you get somebody in to do a job, and if you got a football manager in to do the job, you let them do the job. You stand by them, stick by them. But as the MD, I also had the dilemma that there were people at higher levels who felt the manager should be picking or playing other players in the team. And that really had never crossed my mind that it was something I would have to deal with, that you'd got a director who felt that he knew better than the manager in picking a team. And that caused quite a few problems, obviously, as you can envisage, with regard to the sort of situation within the club itself, and obviously, and the manager, the relationship between the manager and the board, because obviously we had board meetings which the manager would have to attend, talk about football matters, but then you've got the manager saying, well, if I'm not allowed to pick the team I want to pick, you can't blame me if results aren't going the way they are going. So it was a very difficult and not a comfortable situation. It wasn't something that I was used to, and if people say what your time is those 3 years, I think these things have changed.
I suppose as well in that time, John, when you were managing director, you could possibly see both sides of it. You're there running it as a business, you're an essential cog of the management team, but you've been a player, so you know how players think, you know how managers think.
Yeah. And that can be useful, can work against you, because obviously you know the way that players work, and by dealing with a manager that they can put their hand around certain players' shoulders and make them feel better, and others need a bit of a stronger telling off.
Was it ever a difficult position, did you think?
For me?
Yes.
No, I think the 2 years I had as director before I took over as managing director helped me. I had a lot of difficulty to start off with, because I felt more of an affinity with the players, and I felt that I should be associating more with the players rather than the directors, because I didn't know the directors all that well, and I was a former player, so I would naturally sort of gravitate towards the players. Yeah. And it was only sort of after those 2 years that you realise there's a separation, and there has to be a separation. I tried to keep myself away from the football as a managing director as much as possible, because I saw it and knew it as Mark McGee's job, together with Colin Lee, and as I said a bit earlier, to leave them to do what we'd appointed them to do the managing and to run the football team. And there were clashes, because at the time there was issues with academies being set up, and academy managers wanted to take responsibility and total control over the academies, whereas I saw the academies as very much a part of the football manager's remit anyway, because they're players. And if the players, the manager should have total control of all the players, regardless of what age they are. So there were certain sort of political movings at the time, which actually caused a little bit of friction in the club.
Was it ever difficult between you and Mark McGee? I mean, he as a former player like yourself, striker like yourself, didn't score as many goals as you, but then not many people did. And there he was as the manager. I mean, did he ever come up to you and go, "Hey, John, you know what it's like being a manager," type of thing, trying to get you on his side?
I was always on his side, so Mark never needed to do that with me. Got to bear in mind, I'd never managed a team, so I didn't feel I'd got the knowledge or the expertise to be able to sort of give Mark any guidance. He was a football manager, and a very experienced football manager. If you remember, he came from Leicester.
He did, yes.
And he was doing very well there.
Came with him.
That's right. And so, experienced manager, you leave him to it. It was an area of the club I'd already decided I was never going to get involved in from when I finished football. So it was a case of I went with him. He was there as the manager, and I was going there to support him. That sort of link between there and the board was the difficulty, where it was an unusual situation for me, and I was learning all the time, and there was things there which I would never have expected. Whereas, as I mentioned, that you then got situations where, the directors or a certain group within the directors were trying to dictate to the manager what he should and shouldn't be doing in selection, in buying players. I even had a situation where I was told that we'd put in an offer for a player. Mark McGee didn't know about it. The manager didn't know about it. It was done by a director, and really that's, to me...
You can't have that, can you?
It shouldn't happen, Bob, but the more you talk within the game, and I was fortunate, but I was on the Football League board, and you're talking to other people at that level, it happens. And I should think it's probably one of the areas of grief in a lot of football clubs, where you've got people other than the manager thinking they've got the right to stick their oar in about team selection and players. I can understand fans do it because they do it day in, day out, every match day and afterwards, and that's part and parcel of football. But when you've got people within your own organisation basically, undermining the manager, it's not right, and it's bound to cause grief.
You said there were other things before the break. You said there were other things you'd have done differently. What else would you have done differently, John? I
think I would have been stronger. I think I was inexperienced, and I think in hindsight, coming to taking on Sir Jack's offer was more a heart thing than a head thing, and in hindsight, I'm probably more prepared for that sort of role now than I was when I took it 18-20 years ago. So I would have probably been a lot stronger, a lot more forceful with regard to the role of the board and their influence or attempts to influence the other aspects of the business.
In the time that Jack owned this club, both of his sons, at different times, Rick and Jonathan were both running the club as well.
Yeah, Rick was after me.
Yes.
Yeah, Jonathan was me.
I mean, did you find on a day-to-day basis, were you dealing with Sir Jack, or were you dealing with other people in the family?
Well, with Jonathan a lot, and then obviously there was a difficult time there when there was a clash between Sir Jack and Jonathan himself, which obviously didn't help from the club point of view. And again, it's probably one of those situations you wish wouldn't have happened and shouldn't have happened, but it did. And again, it impacted on people who were involved, and it wasn't a good time for the club. But then later on, it was more Sir Jack who was involved with the board, one or two other people that came on board with him, and it was a case then. I think that they saw that they needed a new direction. You know, I think the fact I've been there with Mark and then Colin, and from the new people who were there, I don't think there was a great deal of support for myself and Colin, obviously, and there was you know, whether it was due to personalities or whether it was due to the fact that, you know, they didn't see us the ones to take it forward. I don't know. You think about it a lot, but in the end, if the situation isn't right, and it wasn't right for anybody, and I wasn't happy with the way things appeared to be going, so it was better for me to get out, Bob. You know, we're here for a very short time, and you need to enjoy what you're doing. And that last, 6 months or so at the club weren't particularly enjoyable at all. So it was the right thing for me.
Was it your decision in the end to go?
No, not well. A bit of both, really. You know, it's the writing's on the wall, isn't it? When they start talking about bringing somebody else in. You know, the fact that they're thinking of that in the first place means that they're not happy with the role that you're doing, even though there was an offer of another position, which wouldn't have been the right thing for me to do anyway, because if somebody comes in, that person should have a clean sheet to start with. So it was well, it wasn't my decision to leave to start off with, but in the end it was the right decision for me to go.
Did your relationship with Sir Jack sour then?
No, not at all. In fact, I've got some nice letters from him about the time I was going, and his wish that for me to keep involved with the club, and he was sorry that we couldn't agree on a position within the club. So not at all, Bob. In fact, he was supportive all along. I think at that stage he'd actually handed over more sort of responsibility to other people on the board, and it was more or less their decision, and I'm comfortable with that. But my relationship with Sir Jack was never affected at all.
Has any of what happened in that time when you left, from being MD, was that anything to do with you thinking, right, well, now I must cut the ties, I must do something else, I can't keep going to matches, I can't keep doing this?
I was never a football supporter anyway, so keeping away from games, it was wise to keep away from the club, in the early days, for 6-12 months. I didn't feel comfortable coming back here because it was been like coming back to what it used to be. But there was always an invitation from the club for me to come to matches. But I then got involved in other things, from a business point of view. And to be perfectly honest, I had less time to come to games anyway. So you then develop sort of social groups and size and family take precedent to coming to football matches. And so that basically is what happened.
I think a lot of people will be surprised, won't they? Because to hear you say you were never really a great supporter, people think that you will sit down and watch Match of the Day and Sky and all the rest of it. And it just doesn't follow, does it?
No, not at all. And I think that's the case with a lot of footballers. Because you tend to start playing football at an early age, 12, 13, 14. You're playing on a Saturday, you're playing on a Sunday morning or whatever in those days. So you're actually playing when the matches were on. And because I was from Warrington, it was rugby league town anyway, you didn't go to matches. Very rare I went to a football match. I'd go to rugby league games, but then coming to Wolverhampton, it was a case of you were then playing. It was all about playing, not about supporting. And whilst Wolves is close to my heart as a team, it's following football is not something that comes natural to me, and it's not easier to keep away, but it's easier for me because I've got other things that occupy my time more than football. And I come to the occasional game, mainly in the evening, Bob, if there's an evening game, because on a Saturday I've got so many other things I'm doing. Well, they don't always play on a Saturday nowadays, do they?
Yeah. Right. So how did young John Richards in Cheshire, from a rugby league town, how did he become a professional footballer then? if rugby league was what everybody watched, and weren't you due to go off to college or something, and then you came for a trial and just never went home?
Yeah, but that was when I was 18. But John Richards was a football player and a rugby league player from the age of 8 or 9 at his junior school. So with football, Jimmy Greaves was my hero. You know,
None better, eh?
Yeah, and it was football that I always played. And even when I went to the grammar school, it was a grammar school that played football rather than rugby union. Stevie Kinder and myself were the same age. He went to a grammar school, but he went to a grammar school, I think it was in Widnes, which actually played rugby union instead of football. So he actually grew up as a rugby union player, which won't surprise people who know Steve and have been Wolves supporters.
Yes.
So he followed that direction, but he played football for a local team. But I always played football, and then at 16, through your school, you then get picked up by a local team, play for them. 17, 18, you start playing in what was the Mid Cheshire League, but then it was a case of playing at the grammar school. I got selected for Lancashire Grammar School's boys team, and from that into England Grammar School boys team. And it was there that there was a Wolves scout at a tournament who first of all asked whether I was connected to a club. Said no. He said, "Would you come to Wolves?" Well, I was already due to go to Chester, to the Teachers Training College. I'd got a place there after taking my A-levels, so it was always in my mind to become a teacher. But Wolves only offered me a 1-year contract anyway, because I was a fairly raw sort of player. I'd obviously escaped local scouting networks or whatever, and hadn't been picked up till I was 18, nearly 19. And so they kept my place open at college for a year, assuming I was going to fail. And as it turned out, I was lucky. I was lucky and unlucky because it was at the time when Peter Knowles was the star man. Doug was, I remember seeing Doug on the television, flicking up and scoring a goal against Hull in 1968 or something like that. So the thought of coming to Wolves was actually, it was Wolves, one of the top clubs in the country, world renowned.
So when you played for the England schoolboys, was anybody else in that team who became a top player?
No.
No.
There was a lad in the Lancashire schoolboys, John Lacey. Lacey played for Fulham. John played for Fulham.
Yeah.
There were a couple of lads from the England team that came here, a lad called Mickey Spelman. There's a lad from the Scottish team, Dougie Devlin, who came here, but just didn't quite make it. And I think yes, there was a lad called Keith Fair.
Yeah, I remember.
From Bristol.
Yeah.
I think Keith went on to Bristol.
Yeah.
So there was 2 or 3 of us who actually went on to have sort of reasonable careers as professionals.
Yeah. So many players say to me, I started off as a centre half and became a goalkeeper. You weren't a goalkeeper who became a centre forward and scored goals, were you?
Yeah.
Well, really?
My first ever match was as a goalkeeper. It was when I was 9 years old at Orford Junior School, and nobody. It was under 11s,
right,
and nobody playing goal. And I wanted to play football. All the others were 2 years older than me, and I can remember I said I'll play. So I went in goal, and I can remember coming across ball, and it was when they used size 3 or size 4 footballs to catch it. It went straight through my hands and hit me in the face and knocked me over. We lost 6-0.
And you thought, I'm going to be centre forward?
No, I was then made right back, right half, inside right.
You made your way.
I had to work, but all on the right.
But don't you just, like, Jimmy Greaves, your hero, don't you just have to have an instinct to be a goal scorer?
Yeah, and it was late. It was only later on when I was about 11 or 12 that actually kicked in. I was actually in a natural position. It was an inside right position. It wasn't the centre forward. It was an inside right position. So it's playing off.
Yes.
With wingers, that sort of thing. And ironically, that's almost how we became with Wolves. With Doug as the centre forward and Waggy as the winger. It was me in that inside right, inside left position as we developed at that time. So it was I think by just trying different positions, you naturally fall into it. And scoring goals, as you said, it's instinctive in a lot of people. You know,
great feeling.
Look at Bully, you know, they score goals. I could score goals. From the age of 11, that was what I could score goals.
Winning goals in League Cup finals.
Lovely. Yeah, fantastic. Nice memories.
I can still see your face.
Yeah, I can still see the goal, Bob. I can see it, you know, from Alan Sunderland's cross and clipping off Rodney Marsh's heel and rolling across to me on the penalty spot, and Keith McRae was in goal, wasn't he?
Red-headed goalkeeper.
Yeah, and I can remember all that vividly. It's a long time ago. And now, I'm very proud of what we've achieved as a business.
Company's called Pitch Care.
Pitch Care. Dave Saltman is the managing director. Used to be the head groundsman here at Wolves, and about 6 months after I'd finished up here at Molyneux in 2000, he said, "I've got this idea about setting up a website for groundsmen." And I said, "I'm not doing anything." And he set it up in the science park. There was him, me, and almost like an apprentice web developer. And lo and behold, it's become one of the top websites, magazines in the country. You know, it's used by groundsmen, greenkeepers across the UK, abroad, advice, information. People buy things from us. It's, you know, we've gone from 3 of us to 80.
You know all about grass, do you know?
Sorry?
Do you know all about grass?
No, but I know a man who does.
Because I know you. I remember you having, as a present, a mower you could sit on to cut your grass at home.
That's right, and that was what I treated myself to, so I could relax a bit more. But it was one of the things that it has given me is a lot more satisfaction and pride, and which is why I said I think I would be better now as a managing director of Wolves now than I was in 1997.
I feel we've only scratched the surface, but having said that, I've enjoyed what we've talked about, and as ever, it's been a genuine pleasure to talk to you, John. Thank you for your time. Thanks for all your stories.
Thank you, Bob.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, cheers.